Katie, we're here to talk about a movie that I think is pretty great, but I have a hard time thinking of it as a great movie because that kind of implies, hey, everybody, go out and rush out and see it, which I do want people to do. But it is a profoundly disturbing, upsetting, and I think pretty unique experience that, I wouldn't be upset or, I would totally understand if someone went to see this movie based on our recommendation and came back and said, how dare you put me through that? We are talking about Warfare, the brand new film from Alex Garland and co-directed by Ray Mendoza, who is a former Navy SEAL, and is the true story of Mendoza's harrowing experience as a SEAL in Iraq in 2006 in Ramadi, where his team was brought in to run support for a group of Marines who was trying to move through the city. They get kind of holed up in this apartment building and have to essentially fight their way out, or at least last long enough for reinforcements to come. We caught this last month at a very early preview screening at the Music Box here in lovely Chicago, with Garland and Mendoza and co-star Will Poulter in attendance for a great Q&A. And I'm excited to talk about this movie, but wow, this was a rough one.
Rough isn't even, yeah. It's one of those films that once everything starts going, you cannot look away. And it's like, I feel like if someone had taken my pulse, someone would have thought I had run a marathon. Like, it is just so action-packed, and the intensity, the tenseness, and yet that bond of camaraderie and, the little bit of levity that they have with the humor in it, at least at the beginning. And then when stuff goes down, you don't see, there's no funniness, just survival. This was such a great experience at the Music Box. Funny enough, I actually saw Alex Garland at a screening exactly 10 years ago to the date that we were at the screening on March 16th. So, and that was for Ex Machina. I would have loved to have talked to him about that, but unfortunately I could not. But wow, this movie, one of the things I love so much about it is that and Ray Mendoza talks about this vehemently, and he talked about it, during the Q&A, is that it's through the eyes and the memories of each of the individuals that were there. So basically, as Alex Garland said, there's really no script, because it's like each one of these guys, they told what they remember and what they went through and stuff. And I don't know about you, Ian, but right away, the first thing I thought of, like, when I was watching the film, and of course at the end, it was like, and the Academy Award for sound design goes to Warfare. That just, wow. One of the things about it is that each one of these guys, like, experienced something completely different, like with the sound of, like, being shell shock and, the muffled sound. And then you have someone with, like, all the screams, and then you have someone who's completely silent, but every single one of them had something different. And they did such a chef's kiss job at making, the audience experience that. And also, it was great to see Alex Garland and Ray Mendoza talk about the fact that while someone may think that an individual on screen, it's like an act of cowardice when they're not moving, it's also, they are completely, some of them can be dazed. Some of them are just like completely, you've got your adrenaline pumping, you're possibly going to die. You just saw someone get blown up. It's like, there's so many mixed feelings that you just don't know what each person is going through. And I just really hope that audiences know that, because that's a huge factor in this film.
It is, and, I didn't catch the name of the guy who moderated the discussion last night. Do you remember who that was?
His name is Isaac. I don't know his last name, but you can find the Q&A on the Blonde in Front because I made sure to tape all of it, and it is up there right now.
Well, and I will, it's also going to be linked down below. So yeah, because folks should definitely watch that. And I would recommend also specifically watching Ray Mendoza, because I was sitting up in the front row with you and also with David Fowley. Earth's Mightiest Critic
Mhm.
were very well represented last night at the Music Box, or last month, as it were. Spoiler alert, we're talking about this from the past. But watching Mendoza's face when he came out and was starting the Q&A, he looked uncomfortable, but not in the way that, like, he's not used to public speaking. Just I felt like, I could be wrong about this, but I felt like he had been watching the movie and was just having all these experiences of, reliving it. Of course, he had a hand in making it, but just seeing that with an audience, he just looked a little bit shaken. And I think I dare say that's going to be the reaction to a lot of people. But what I was going to point out was Isaac, the moderator, and this all does tie back to the film, folks. He had said he did a little pre-screening introduction, and he said, Music Box has a strict no cell phone policy, so turn them off, put them away. If we see them on, you'll be asked to leave. And he said, but I've seen this movie, and I don't think that's going to be a problem. So I'm like, okay, good. All ramped up and ready to go. But I want to say a half hour into the movie, I felt like I had been lied to, because this is an extremely slow burn where nothing happens and then everything happens. And around that 20-minute mark, and I think it'll have tremendous rewatch value, but there's an extended shot or scene where there's a couple of snipers up in the nest in the apartment they've set up, and they're just looking through the scope and tracking people and writing down notes. And you cut to another room full of people, and they're, radioing in these, you can tell that they're bored just giving these status updates. And you're like, is this going to be like a ghost story situation where it's the artsiness of, oh, the real horror of war is boredom? And I know people who have served, and they say that, yes, sometimes you get in a firefight, but a lot of it is, doing grunt work or waiting around. And they definitely capture that in this movie. But oh my goodness, once things pop off, they pop off dramatically, and not in an action movie kind of glorified way, but in a way that this movie is 90 minutes long, but in the thick of it, it feels like it's several hours. It's quite amazing.
I completely agree. And it's funny when you talk about how the beginning is the slow burn. Like, I love the part in the beginning where you see all of the crew. Like when I say crew, all of the military personnel in the beginning, and they're watching a video, and you see that camaraderie, and they're laughing. And then a little bit later, they do a couple things that made me laugh out loud. And I don't want to spoil what it is, but that to me is one of the funniest scenes I've seen in a film all year long. I know it's only April. However, you also know that I see probably about, I don't know, 10, 12 films, a week, if not more. I mean, I'm going to go to 4 screenings this week alone. So I see a
Wow.
lot, but that really, really was funny. And again, that I think signified, showing that camaraderie with, the guy next to you that's like, has this giant gun and stuff like that. But one of the things when you're talking about in that scene with the boredom, the thing that I honestly, when I was watching that, I was like, oh, this is like they're working on a movie, because, 90% of working on a film is just sitting around preparing for it, getting everything together, doing all that stuff. Then you've got maybe a couple minutes of, of a scene you're going to film, and then switch it over. And it's like when I was watching that, I'm like, yeah, this is very much like working on a film. But man, when the stuff goes down, it goes down fast, it goes down hard, and it's like this organized chaos. Like the guys know what's happening. They're all about, taking the details, doing this, making sure everything's out of the different rooms and stuff like that, which I thought it was very interesting when there's a question like why the like when you have like a grenade thrown at you and bullets like going over your head, why are people so interested in making sure that different items are gathered? And to me, I was like, well, because if you don't pick them up and take them, someone else is, and you definitely don't want that. And I think that's a kind of a given, like in any circumstance, that has to do with the military. It's like, yeah, no, you need to take this home.
Well, and that's the thing I think is, I that question, and that was you're bringing up a question that was raised during the Q&A. That raised
Mhm.
my eyebrow along with the question that preceded it. And I was kind of ranting about this to Fowley last night after on our kind of walk back to the car, and I will temper my harshness with the question because I think I said that those were a couple of the most boneheaded questions I'd ever heard in a Q&A, and Alex Garland was very generous in his answer and taking them seriously, but I could not, because the first question was from a lady who got up and said, asking Mr. Mendoza, when you were in Iraq, why did you go to that apartment building? Did you like the way it looked? Was there some kind of a strategic reason? I'm like, did you like the way it looked? Did you hear the question that just came out of your mouth? And the other thing about why were they so intent on getting these supplies back? And to your point, Katie, and it's what I brought up to David, like, yeah, it's I don't want to get political here, but it's one of the big kind of kerfuffles from a few years ago when we left Afghanistan and we left tons of, billions of dollars of military equipment right there to be picked up and probably used against us today. But yeah, that's exactly right. Anything from, grenades to the sledgehammer, which they went back for. But what I want to key in on is something that you said about the reactions of the SEALs. And Will Poulter talked about this when he's discussing the kind of the boot camp that they went through to make this movie and fighting against the actorly instinct, which is in this situation when things are blowing up and I'm supposed to be really freaked out by this situation. I could either try and play that authentically or go to the actorly thing where you really want to make yourself look cool or kind of like, this is going to be my Oscar clip. There was none of that pretense in this movie. And I credit that partially with the lack of a script, which is usually a big criticism of mine. But in this case, it's perfect because while these guys are sitting around not doing anything except taking notes, calling in, coordinates and things like that, during this first half hour, you don't get the long speeches of like, oh, I've got a wife and kid back home, or this is my last tour, I hope nothing happens. It's just, guys doing their job and being bored. It's one of the least Hollywood movies I've seen in a long time.
Hmm. And let's talk about the actors. I mean, one of the notes, like halfway, not even halfway, I think 5 minutes in, is I'm like recognizing so many of the actors, and I'm like, this is like a who's who of young actors that are like, one, character actors, two, really making a name for themselves, like across. I mean, you've got what is it, Joseph Quinn and Charles Melton, Will Poulter, Cosmo Jarvis, Michael Gandolfini. There's so many other ones that I mean, seriously, every single one that I was like, okay, I know him from this, I know him from this, I know him from this, I know him from this. And honestly, when I was looking at the cast, just on screen, because I didn't want to do anything beforehand, but I was looking at the cast, it really reminded me of the film version of the Princeton or Stanford prison experiment. And the young actors that were in that it's like, then went on to do like 18 jillion things and get nominated for Oscars and all this stuff. So it's like, okay, so I see where these guys are going, because I think Charles Melton was almost nominated for an Oscar if he wasn't for May December. And then a number of them, and he was fantastic in this film. But I really can't critique anyone's performance, because every single one of them, you're going to react differently in these situations when, again, bullets are flying. The different things like when show of force, which I didn't know what that was, and that's when one of those jet engine planes like goes very low to the ground and just completely decimates the road, and just stuff is flying. You've got like windows are blown out. You've got the shell shock. I mean, I didn't know that even existed. That to me, and to have that happen, I think
Twice.
4 times.
Was
it twice?
I
think
could
it
be
was
wrong.
2 or 3. I think it was
Okay.
at least 3 times.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure it was 3 times. But to have that even once, I was like, good God, you could, I mean, anyone in that vicinity would have been able to feel it in their chest area. I mean, it's like, if that didn't make you almost skip your heartbeat, I don't know what would. Like, that to me was like, yeah, and I'm going home and packing up. Like, sorry, you Americans, you guys are good. If this is what it's going to be, it's like, yep, I'm done.
Well, and that's, it's interesting because when you said the plane came down and decimated the road, they didn't fire anything. It was strictly the impact of a fighter jet going so low, just about low to the ground, and the sheer sonic impact of it.
Mhm.
And during the first scene, especially, you saw the SEALs inside. They were covering their ears even through the helmets and everything. It was bad. But you're right. They do that a few times because they are out of options. The first Bradley tank that they call in because they're trying to get a couple of try to get one. I think they were just going out there trying to get out and escape, but that
Yeah.
is blown up by an IED. And then later they're able to get a couple more Bradleys to come in by essentially lying, pretending to be a commanding officer. But they get 2 Bradleys in to let the wounded out, and they end up in a firefight. And I won't say exactly how things wind up. At least one person made it out alive to tell the tale, as they say. But it's one of those experiences where you don't know when or where someone's going to get, blown up or their head blown off. That whole scene where after the first tank explosion and 2 guys have their legs and their lower parts like ripped to shreds, but they're still alive and they're being brought back into the lobby of this apartment building. It's an open door. I mean, there's a couple of turns to get in there, but at any moment you're thinking, even though there's a room full of Navy SEALs and they're trying to treat these wounded men, there's nothing to say that 50 armed jihadis couldn't just come marching right into that wide open, space and take the rest of them out. It's a constant, danger whenever they're going up onto the roof. They're trying to shoot all the different other roof positions. They are a building surrounded by other buildings, sometimes with higher roofs than they are, and there are people shooting at them. It's completely harrowing. And I'm not going to say, oh, it's just like being there, because nothing can, compare to that experience, but it's about as close as you're going to get sitting in a comfy movie theater, watching it's not even a piece of fiction. I don't know how much of this is embellished. It's all drawn from memory, as they say, but again, it doesn't feel pretentious. There isn't a happy rainbow ending where people go back and like, hey, I made it home to see the birth of my kid. None of that stuff.
Yeah, they don't it's not like there's like a hero who saved the day. They're all heroes. The fact that they survived and are able to tell this tale is I mean, that's heroic in a way, because as you were saying, when they're bringing their fellow soldiers back to the house, at any point I was expecting like, okay, is no one throwing a grenade? Is no one going to like shoot from the rooftop that they just had? I mean, and I think that's with the and I think the only reason why that is because with the IED, like everyone surrounding it had to have been also completely off par from what they were doing, because I mean, the carnage that is in that scene is not for the faint of heart. And then when they're bringing the gentleman back, I mean, I am constantly amazed at what the human body can endure and take. And yeah, it's honestly, it is, it's dumbfounding to see what they went through, that more of them didn't, end up having injuries, or, I mean, obviously we don't know, because I mean, it's it's a very, like, just, it shows, like, just, we see a little bit from the day before, we think, a little bit from the night, and then that basically 75 minutes when they're in that house and going through the motions. So that's the thing. I mean, it is a very fast-paced film, and just the intensity of everything when it starts going, it does not stop.
Yeah, and it's fast paced up, after a certain point because we
Yeah.
established they do take their time. Um, but yeah, it's completely immersive. And I sorry, I had a train of thought and it just left the station. I hate it when that happens. Oh, the sound. I was reminded of the sound and what we were talking about, that effect that it's in. It seems like every movie involving explosives or war nowadays, where everything gets kind of distorted, or you hear that kind of the tinnitus ringing, and nothing kind of makes sense, and the actor is disoriented. We see everything from a kind of wobbly point of view. I mean, we've seen that in everything from Iron Man to the Hurt Locker. And I was reminded of Catherine Bigelow's Hurt Locker, a movie that I thought was pretty good up until the whole bit where he comes back and he's dealing with the PTSD. The war elements of that felt so real, and then the rest of it felt so much like, hey, we're going for the statue drama. This is like the best parts of the Hurt Locker with none of the bad parts. And kind of evolved in terms of the sensibility. One of the things I loved that Garland said at the Q&A was that they were trying to, and this is another thing, like the lack of reaction to the theater. I was like, what is going on? He's like, yeah, we were really trying to go with a Dogma sensibility. You guys know what Dogma is? I'm like, uh-huh. But no, Dogma 95, the whole kind of like the school of thought of like very minimalistic filmmaking. There's actually a set of rules of things that you cannot do in order to, make this an authentic experience. And I was thinking about it. I almost wish that Q&A had preceded the movie, because as he was saying that, I thought, this does feel like it was very naturally lit. There didn't seem to be any kind of a script. There was there was a lot of kind of editing and things going on, but I think they were trying to capture a lot of different movement in different places around, especially that room when they were trying to, like, especially operate on people. So I'm willing to forgive it that, but the realism is so gripping in this movie that I appreciated the restrictions that the filmmakers placed on themselves in order to have an unfiltered look at what happened that day. And something that I don't know if it's a criticism of the movie. I think it's just something that could have been added, that I don't know how they would have added it. But when Mendoza came out, he on the stage, he talked about how the reason this movie was made, or one of the reasons, is because Elliot, who's the sniper that we meet for that extended period of time in the beginning, um, he gets some of the worst of it in terms of this combat. And he's fine today, spoiler, but he doesn't remember anything that happened that day. And I guess that, I don't know if he blocked it out or if it was the brain trauma or whatever, but Mendoza wanted to make this movie for his friend. And that's a really powerful piece of information, but it's something I feel like we have, but I don't think
Mhm.
that's in the movie anywhere. Like, even though we see them kind of at the end and like hey, here are the real life guys and everything, that point really isn't driven home anywhere.
It, I mean, at the end, it does say for Elliot,
Right.
but I, I mean, I do think we have a huge benefit going to that Q&A. And I know I normally record Q&As just because, I mean, there's a lot of hidden things and hidden meetings that, directors or actors, they let loose at the Q&As. And I think with this one, especially, there's so much information that I think will benefit an audience if they had known that. Like, I mean, as you were saying, he's really hitting this home for Elliot, because he doesn't remember. And one of the things that I think the movie does that you don't see in a lot of films, especially about the military. When stuff's going on, there's oops, a couple things happen, like someone throws a smoke bomb. The smoke ends up a lot of it ends up going in the wrong direction. Someone's shooting somebody with morphine and they got in their thumb. And you know what? I've seen enough things that happens, but I mean, you've got like everything, like no matter what the training, until you actually are in that foxhole, until you're in that situation where the bullets are flying, you've got screams, you don't know if this person's going to live or die, there's blood everywhere, things are going to happen, and yet you compose yourself. You've got your fellow man next to you is like, hey, what are we going to do? Let's get this. And it's like, okay, I got to go in. Like, we've got this and we're going to get it right this time. And I have to give them credit for that, because that's, again, they don't show this film like, here's an individual hero that did this. They all had to do this together. Like, I mean, and I think that's, again, you really have to show like these guys banding together and getting this done, because if they hadn't done that, none of them would have survived.
Yeah, and there's a very telling moment, and they lead up to it, I think, very well, and do the old switcheroo in terms of the Hollywood expectation of how this kind of scene would play. Will Poulter's character Eric is sort of the leader of this unit of SEALs, and after the attack and the regrouping inside the lobby, he's shaky. He's kind of fumbling. One of his underlings, not underlings, the people who report to him, ask him, like, what do we do? And he's like, I don't know, man. And he kind of goes off into another room and has a moment. And then when the backup finally gets there, he talks to the leader of that unit. He kind of pulls him aside. And he's like, okay, so what are we going to do? He's like, I need you to take over, because I can't, I'm messed up. Not I messed up, but I am messed up. What happened out there affected me. And I don't think that I am in the right place to lead these men. He doesn't say all that, but he says it in what he doesn't say. And I feel like other movies, we've seen that the leader is kind of cool, calm, and collected, and then something goes wrong and he freaks out and either leads to a bunch of people getting killed, or he goes insane and becomes the villain of the movie, that kind of thing. We don't get that here. And he's not looked down upon. It's not like the guy says, get your act together and you get out there and lead those men. He's like, okay, I got it. Our main objective is to get out of here, so I'm going to step up. And he does, and he's very good at it. And you get the feeling is partially because even though they had to fight their way to get in there, they hadn't experienced what these guys has experienced. So he was slightly better more equipped in that moment to help out.
Yeah, and again, I mean, it's each one of these individuals, like, because some of those guys were like right behind the guys who had a number of their limbs blown up, like, and it's like the guys behind that didn't get that same effect. So, I mean, with each, it's like everyone experiences this differently, and there's no right or wrong. It's like that was one thing that Ray Mendoza said. It's like, look, this this really has to be explained, that this person is not a coward, and it's like they're doing this because in these situations, it's like everyone's emotions are different, everyone's reactions are different. And again, that's a lot that it's like, yeah, I mean, everyone watching this, seriously, watch the Q&A that I recorded, because I think like the Q&A needs to be watched before the movie, so you really get the heart and understand what's going on. I even did like a little 2-minute thing that talks about that really just sets the pace and stuff like that Ray Mendoza talks about. But I mean, the fact that Mendoza and Garland worked on Civil War together, I think is incredible. And knowing that Garland did this, because I know he has said that after Civil War, he wasn't going to direct anything anymore, or maybe just directing it as a whole. So I'm just really hoping that is not true, because I personally, I think Alex Garland is one of the best directors out there, and I love what he does with scripts and writing characters, and especially characters for women, because he has such amazing things to say. And the especially, I mean, Annihilation was my favorite film when it came out in 2018. I will always love that movie, and I think the CGI was way ahead of where it is now. But yeah, I'm just hoping he doesn't stop directing, because I think he's a fantastic director.
I had not heard that, and I'm way behind on the news apparently. But did he say why he was going to stop directing? Is it diminishing returns, or is he frustrated, or he wants to go paint? I don't know what.
I'm not sure. I thought it was an article in The Guardian. I could be wrong with the publication or the news, but I do recall him saying that after, because I think I just read it recently, that he was saying that after Civil War, he was planning on stepping away from directing. But I would have to see where that was. I thought that was, I don't know if it was late 2023 or if it was like March or April 2024, like right before Civil War. I feel like it came out before Civil War, but not the article didn't come out after. But I'm hoping that this is not the case, and people say stuff when stuff is going on, so.
Yeah, I was a huge fan of Ex Machina. Ex Machina pretty much got me into the, Alex Garland. I will watch anything he does for life. I was not a fan of Annihilation, um, but a lot of that came down to, uh, you know, th- my issue with Alex Garland's movies tend to come back to the script. There's always like something or a few somethings where I'm like, eh. But as far as the filmmaking and the talent he gets to, and the way he directs them, flawless. I didn't like Civil War, but again, that came down to, yeah, it was a script thing, and just the idea of this kind of a. I talked about it on a live stream at the time, which was like a year ago. It's crazy, but
Mhm.
the idea of like the Brit kind of doing a summation of an idea of what the future of American political discourse might look like if things broke down. I'm like, yeah, it sounds like someone who's been reading websites from across the pond. But as far as like the craft involved, uh, warfare, you might think, oh, he's making another war movie. No, this is an evolution of what he was doing in Civil War. If you thought the action scenes in Civil War were intense, uh, they got nothing on what's going on in warfare. And I too hope that that's not the case, that he's quitting. I'm hoping that this movie does well enough, because if the headlines come out, Garland's film, bombs, no one wants to see this war movie, that might put him over the edge. I don't want to play armchair psychologist, but damn it. I also thought it was interesting that he co-wrote and co-directed this with Ray Mendoza, and I was immediately reminded of when Robert Rodriguez teamed up with Frank Miller to co-direct and co-write Sin City, 21 years ago. Oh my God. Um,
Stop it. What?
2004, wasn't it? Yeah.
I mean, it pains me to say this. I have to think of when Brittany Murphy passed away, because I think that was like a couple years before that happened, and I hate to say that that's the timeline that I'm thinking of for many reasons. Uh
Yeah.
God, 21. Yeah, I think it was. I think you. Yeah, I think you are right, because I think I did a post of Sin City being 20 years last year and doing a thing. But
Oh.
wow.
But it's interesting because much in the same way that Rodriguez had a respect for Miller and the source material, because Sin City was a very famous and influential comic book, and Miller was a very famous and influential writer going all the way back to The Dark Knight Returns. There is a reverence on the part of the filmmaker to say, all right, we're adapting your work. We want to we want to tell this story the way that you had laid it out, the way you want. We want to honor that material. I feel that's the same way here with Alex Garland, and that another reason to watch the Q&A, because they talk about the way they would kind of divvy up their directing duties, and then also divvy up the or kind of separate the line of the actors from the directors. They would allow the actors to kind of go off and form their own little, Navy SEAL performing company, and then Mendoza and Garland, they said they leave for an hour probably to go take care of other technical aspects, and they come back and see what the actors had, done for them. And it's fascinating. But I just love the idea of this co-directing based on this mutual respect, admiration for, the written work, the experience, the lived experience on the page, bringing that to the screen in a way that I don't know if this would felt the same if Garland had just known Mendoza and said, "Hey, I want to write a story based on your story." The fact that it's the guy who was there and being there on set, and some of the other SEALs who were involved in the story also being on set to watch recreations of what happened that day, it smacks of authenticity.
Yeah, and what you were saying, like in the Q&A, I love the fact that the admiration they had for each other, because when one would kind of like downplay their gifts as a director, the other one would be like, I don't know what he's talking about. He's fantastic, and back and forth. And you really can tell that these gentlemen respect each other. They admire what they bring to the screen, to the actors, to the whole not agenda, but the whole experience of the film. And hearing Will Poulter talk about that too, because, there were little things like they had 3 weeks, 3 weeks of like, boot camp before they started shooting. And the shoot was only a 5-week shoot. So that is very, very, very short for a film. But how each of the actors had like a little nickname for each other and stuff like that. And again, watch my Q&A that I recorded. But yeah, I don't know. It's a unique it's a unique film about war, because again, this is, as Alex Garland said, he said, he wrote the script, but he's like, I mean, if you can say that, because basically, I went with what these gentlemen experienced. I wrote it down, and that was it. So if anyone asks me what I should do, it's like, I don't know, ask him. You're playing him. It's like, I'm not really one to ask what happened. You need to ask that guy, because he's the one it happened to. And, it seems like a lot of the soldiers that were in the situation were on set and could give that advice and get inside their heads, so that they gave a great performance. But again, the actors, kudos to them. Like, they really these are great people. So take a look at the cast, because you're going to be seeing them in a lot more films, I would guarantee, in the next 10 years.
Well, and we talked a bit about this last night, and you kind of reiterated here on the show. I only recognize like 2 people on the entire cast, but that's because I'm getting to that point where I basically recognize the characters from Bluey, and that's about it. But I think that's okay, because they are kind of anonymous. There isn't the big kind of posturing like, oh, this is going to be the breakout star of this movie. Even Will Poulter, who has been in a whole bunch of stuff in the last, decade plus, going back to, at least The Revenant 10 years ago. It's weird to say he disappears into the role, but there's nothing. He's one of the bigger marquee stars in this movie, and he's the guy who gives up his command halfway through the proceedings and kind of like is not exactly pushed to the background, but he's not the big cheese. He doesn't go out in this big like heroic blaze of glory. I'm sorry, I'm starting to spoil things. We should wrap up. But the last thing I want to say is that one of the criticisms I had of Civil War is that, and I think a lot of people kind of stayed away, is they got a whiff that it was a political movie. And I want to say that warfare is not, I think it's a completely a political film. Yes, it took place during, the Iraq War and the Bush administration and all that stuff, but this really is just the experience of the people who were over there trying to do a job and trying to save each other and themselves when everything went wrong. It is a vehemently anti-war movie, which is something that in today's climate, you kind of wonder, why does a movie get made and why does it get put out at a certain time? There's usually always some kind of a reason. And I feel like with all this, wars and rumors of wars that we've been talking about, a movie like this is a firm reminder that this is what happens when we send people out to fight. We are very comfortable over here in the States and in many parts of the West watching these things, news stories on the internet, and you hear about, oh, it's drone warfare. So it's just robots flying and blowing things up. But there are still people out there in many parts of the world going through what these guys went through, and there's nothing cool about it. It's tremendously sad, but also this is a reminder that, hey, whatever we can do, people who have the freedom and the voice, and if we disagree with something, we got to stand up and say that we do. Because this is a protest movie, but again, it's not political, it's just humanist.
Yeah, I mean, I would say I agree that, I mean, in any case with war, even when a certain side wins, people lose.
Yeah.
And they lose their sense of empathy. They use their mental capacity. There's so many things that you have to go through. And with Civil War, I actually thought Civil War was more focused on photojournalism and like capturing those images that, sometimes people will never see. And I thought that it was interesting that the same year that Civil War came out, that Lee came out, that starred Kate Winslet, which again is about war, but also photojournalism to show what is happening behind the scenes of war that, people don't hear about. Like, oh, this is overseas, this is here, you don't see that. But these photos capture what is happening so that people can connect and have that. It's like, we need to try and stop this. We need to figure out what's going on. And with warfare, this shows like each one of these soldiers and what they individually went through. It's not just oh, here it is. It's like each one of them had a different story, and it's through their memories that we have this film. And as far as it, I don't necessarily think it's political, just the fact that, yeah, war is horrible. Like, again, I mean, even when people win, there's going to be so many people that lose, like person that lost their house, the people who live there and what they have to go through, that trauma that they have to deal with, like anyone, loved ones that are with soldiers that have to help them like get through what they saw, what they experienced. And, I mean, with the VA hospitals that are helping our people in the military every single day. And now what's going on with possibly closing those down, all that stuff. Like, I mean, there's a lot of stuff that happens that, I mean, these people are giving their lives, for America and to try and help whoever's in the country they're with, or whatever. I want to say whatever America's telling them to go fight for. That's kind of the thing. But yeah, it's like warfare is a very different film that I don't think a lot of people have seen before. And I do recommend it. As you said, it's the slow burn at the beginning, but you need that little bit of like a little bit of a chuckle, a little bit of levity, because then when it happens, you're just freaking running like I said, running a marathon and running for your life, and you're not going to stop until the very end.
Yeah, and it's an April movie, so there's 8 months roughly until award season. So this is one of those tricky cases where I feel like it could very well end up being forgotten by the end of the year. But I hope that's not the case, because I think more people need to see it. I think it needs to get a lot of recognition, particularly in the technical and sound categories that we've talked about. Yeah, so folks out there, the thing is, it's not really a downer. I didn't feel the greatest coming out of the theater, but it is a movie that makes you think and makes you feel. And it's not disposable popcorn, rah-rah entertainment, which is something definitely different. But anyway, Katie, we're going to leave it there. Thank you, by the way, for sharing your Q&A, which again, folks can see linked down below. I promise this wasn't just an excuse, a commercial for the Q&A, but it is a fantastic conversation, and brought to you by the blonde in front, who was in fact in front and able to capture all the great details. But
The checks in the mail, Ian, for posting the Q&A. Just kidding. I don't pay him.
Okay. If you could send some checks mix, I like snacks too, but not through the mail. That'd be messy. But anyway, Katie Glidewell, the blonde in front. Thank you very much for hanging out and talking warfare. The movie opens this Friday, April 11th. It feels weird because we're recording this in March, but yeah, go check it out. Tell all your friends. But again, don't tell them, say, hey, this is going to be amazing. It is, but don't sell them on something that you're going to need some booze or antidepressants or something afterwards. But anyway, thank you, Katie. Thank you out there for watching. If you like this show, please like, subscribe, and all that business. And until next time, whenever that is, whatever that is, thank you and take care. Hey everyone, Ian here. I know, long time no see, but if you like the video you just watched, feel free to subscribe to Kicking the Seat right here, and also check out the playlist and recommended video right here. Thanks for watching.